Reggie, how can we be sure that we have a factual account of Paul's life in the book of Acts?
Well, Wes, one of the great things about the two volumes, Luke and Acts, is that Luke tells us that he goes through a pretty elaborate research process to tell us what he knows. In the Gospel of Luke, according to Luke, he talks about going back and talking with the eyewitnesses and making sure that he gets the story right. In the case of Acts, when we get around to his account of Paul's life, we have the extra added advantage of knowing that he was Paul's traveling companion. And by 2 Timothy, the last thing that Paul wrote, we know that Luke was the one man who stayed with Paul all the way through his ministry. And so as you read through Luke's account in Acts, we find that there are these really nice touches of his own personal knowledge of what was going on. He's able to tell us, for instance, that it was one of Paul's nephews that let Paul know about his about the conspiracy to kill him while he was imprisoned in Jerusalem. And over time, archaeologists have just time after time found the book of Acts being confirmed by archaeological discoveries. And there's this sense that we have as you read the book of Acts that whoever wrote this knew what he was talking about. When Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians 5 about us standing before the bema, the judgment seat of Christ, we know that he had in mind the bema, or the judgment seat that the Roman governor sat on in Corinth, and archaeologists have found that. And Luke describes Gallio, the governor, sitting on that bema when Paul is dragged before him in Acts 18. For the longest time, interpreters just scratched their heads over Paul's mentioning the special office in Ephesus called Asiarch, which means, ruler of Asia. And it wasn't until the 19th and early 20th century when they started excavating Ephesus that they found inscriptions, really for the first time, of this office of the Asiarchs. And then as Ephesus was excavated, they started finding all these inscriptions and little magical formulas and amulets. And until that time, we would read these passages where Paul has these confrontations with the magicians in Ephesus and not know exactly what he was talking about. But as the archaeologists unearthed these things, we started to realize that Ephesus and that whole region had a lot of magical speculation. So the letter, the Gospel according to Luke and the book of Acts over time have just shown themselves to be more and more, we find more and more reason to trust them because of what we found among archaeologists. Not to mention, the whole Christian persuasion is that God didn't just do, he explained, and he used the unique personalities and individuals that he had gifted in order to tell us what he had done and to interpret them for us. And we're so grateful that God gave this particular guy, Luke, the special relationship that he had with Paul.